Today on After Prison Show, we explore the famous Today on After Prison Show, we dive deep into prisoners' last meals while in prison, serving time in prison. Got too much stuff in my pockets. What do I got? Bit sets, keys, Butterfinger wrappers, no lie. Gotta get comfortable when you're filming videos. Little tip of the day. God, that's a lot of trash. Today on After Prison Show, we dive deep into the famous last meals of prisoners while in prison. And some of these meals even I can't believe prisoners were eating while in prison. I was trying to do like a little voiceover right there. That probably was super cringe. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to After Prison Show. And hey, the big camera, it's actually working again. Damnedest thing, I was talking about it on the Bobo, getting ready to put together a GoFundMe for a new camera, and I turned it on and the son of a bitch cut right on. So 70D, thank you for working. Folks, what we're getting ready to do today is something that I can guarantee, hands down, there are at least 100 other videos on YouTube about this same exact thing. Ironically enough, I don't think we've ever done a video about this particular topic, and even with the fact that there are a lot of other videos about the famous last meals of dudes in prison, I mean this with absolutely zero egotisticality. Is that a word? At all. You ain't never seen a video about this topic like this one here. Pretty animated right there. That's pretty good. Sorry, I didn't mean to startle anybody. Now, we just did a video about meals you're guaranteed to eat if you ever go to prison. Knock on wood. That's rubber. I hope none of you guys ever have to go there. But that idea came to me because of something that a guy by the name of Paul C. tweeted to me. And I mentioned that because Paul C. just tweeted something else to me that we're actually turning into a video. And it's about, the famous last meals of famous prisoners who were on the row and ain't no longer here with us. And again, I'm really hoping to put this together in a really After Prison Show type of way for you guys. Now, before we even get into this, I want to share something that came to mind as I was thinking about this video, and hear me out on this idea. I got another business idea, another business model. And I know you guys don't think I'm too sharp with the business, but think about this. What if we started a restaurant, we called it Last Meal? When you went in to sit down in your booth or at the table, instead of either of those, you actually sat in a prison cell with a bunk on each side. So you sit on a bunk, somebody else sits across from you. Your server is dressed up as a correctional officer. Maybe even you got to put on a prison jumpsuit when you come in. And the menu is made up of the meals that we're getting ready to talk about right here in this video. Don't nobody please steal this idea. This is a gold mine right here. This joint gonna be bigger than Denny's, McDonald's, Golden Corral, Old Country Buffet. Boy, that was a throwback right there. Last meal. And what exactly is going to be on the menu, folks? We're getting ready to dive. Should have probably done that a little more animated into all of that right now. Now, I'm going to be honest with you guys. This is called the famous last meals of prisoners. And you would imagine that all of these prisoners were either famous or notorious, like well-known prisoners. But me personally, I only know the first name that's on this list. And if you're anything like me and you don't know these other prisoners, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of insight because I've learned, I did a little bit of research prior to doing this video, a little more about these famous last meals that were eaten by these particular prisoners. So let's go ahead and start with the first meal that's going to be on our restaurant menu, coming to us from Ted Bundy. Now, if you don't know anything about Ted Bundy, go watch a special on Netflix because there's probably 2 or 3 of them up there. I've watched a lot of specials on Ted Bundy. This was I don't even know a word to describe this guy, a very egomaniac type of a dude who represented himself in the courtroom, a guy that considered himself God's gift to women, potentially. Ted Bundy was on death row for murder amongst many other charges, including some bad type of charges, and he was executed in 1989. And folks, this picture right here, well, it's a picture of Ted Bundy's last meal. Looks like something that you might find up inside of a Denny's or a Waffle House. Damn, this man ate good for that final meal. And I'm telling y'all, if we started this restaurant, this would be our #1 seller here. The Ted Bundy Special, which consisted of, oh, this is interesting. I didn't realize this. Ted Bundy declined a special meal and was given a traditional last meal. And if you didn't know what a traditional last meal is, I damn sure didn't. That is a steak that they cooked medium rare, eggs over easy, hash browns, toast with butter and jelly, milk and juice. If we started a restaurant, I guarantee you guys, that meal would be one of our best sellers. This next famous last meal comes to us from a guy that you guys have probably never heard of. I had never heard about this guy until doing the research for this video, and this guy's name is Angel Diaz. And I think before sharing with you guys more about this particular person, let's go ahead and look at his last meal. And this one's pretty shocking right here. You're noticing that there's nothing on the tray. This guy declined his last meal. He didn't want nothing at all. And I wondered to myself, I don't think this would be a tray that would do that well at last meals. Family Eatery. Maybe that should be the full name of this restaurant. He declined his last meal, so he was served a regular prison meal instead, but also declined that. Now that is interesting. We got the Angel Diaz Special, which is like some prison slop. Could you imagine that being your last meal? I wouldn't eat it neither. Now, there's probably a couple of different reasons why this Angel Diaz individual declined his last meal. Potentially too sick, thinking about what's getting ready to happen, to eat anything at all. Or the fact that on this particular list, this is the only guy that maintained his innocence for the crime that he was accused and on death row for. Angel Diaz shot and killed a manager of a strip club back in the, oh God, I don't have the date. I remember, I think it was back in the 80s or the 90s, somewhere during this time. And I read something like all of the patrons of the strip club were forced to go into the bathroom, so nobody actually witnessed this crime take place. Obviously, somebody got killed, but I think that there were more people with this Angel Diaz person. I think it was a robbery and somebody got killed. Now, even more interesting than this, yes, this did happen back in the 80s, if I remember correctly, because of what I'm getting ready to share with you. Even more interesting, it was Angel Diaz's girlfriend who told police he had something to do with it. But again, he maintained his innocence. And it was in 1984 that a jailhouse snitch testified against Diaz, claiming that this guy confessed to everything to him. Now, when I learned that, a number of things came to mind. One, I was shocked to think that as far back as the 80s, this jailhouse snitch thing was taking place, which, really makes me realize that jailhouse snitching has probably been taking place forever. But two, a prosecutor, a judge, these people really got to think or they should think, what prisoner in their right mind is going to confess to a damn cellmate all of their dirty little secrets? It sounds crazy, but the truth of the matter is this type of stuff, it actually does happen. You'll be sitting there telling your war stories. Yeah, this one time, blase, whatever. But if you didn't do this and you're maintaining your innocence, I don't know what to make of that. What do you guys think about this? Really be curious to hear what you have to say. Next meal making this list comes from a prisoner by the name of Ray Rector. Now, this guy was executed in 1981 for the murder of a police officer, but that was only after he had killed a man inside of a restaurant and then was in negotiations with, the police. And the negotiator came inside of the restaurant to try to get Ray Rector to give himself up, which I think he agreed to do. And as they were walking out of the restaurant, this guy shot the cop. So he ended up on death row and got executed in 1981 because of that. And his last meal was steak, fried chicken, cherry Kool-Aid, and pecan pie. Sounds like a pretty good meal right there. Steak and chicken, a little surf and turf. Or a little turf and turf. Trying to really lighten the mood after, you know, what we just learned about this guy. But what's interesting about this guy's meal is he left the pecan pie on the tray, telling the guards that he was saving that for later. So, you know, as I continue to think about this idea, last meals as a restaurant, and the menu consists of all of these last meals, some of these meals actually sound pretty good. You know, can you imagine serving this for dinner at your house? And you know, your significant other, your spouse, your wife, your husband, they're like, wow, chicken and steak? What did I do? And pecan pie with some cherry Kool-Aid. Where did you come up with this idea, honey? I saw it in an After Prison Show video. A murderer ate it as his last meal. You should take a hint, Bob! I don't know where that aggression came from. I was just trying to do a little skit right there. Maybe that was some pent-up hostility and rage within me. I probably need some counseling. I got off track thinking about the restaurant idea. You know, if you knew like what these meals were, I guess like going into the restaurant, it's a novelty, right? Okay, hey, we're gonna go eat in a prison cell. I'm telling you, that idea right there is hands down $1 billion idea. The rest of it though, you know, maybe having like pictures of these individuals with a little bit of their information, who they were, what they did, maybe like their own cell, something like, I don't know. It could be like a Texas Roadhouse. Might even start a damn franchise of these things. Don't take my idea now. Or a food truck, last meal food truck. Next on this list is, I think, the oldest last meal that we have on this list. This comes to us from a guy by the name of Victor Feguer. Probably mispronounced that name as well. And Victor was executed in 1963. What's interesting about this man's case is he was also executed in the federal system, and he was the last federal execution before the feds put in place a moratorium. Boy, I nailed that. A little hiatus, a little pause in them doing the death penalty. He would be the last prisoner executed for 40 years. It would be 40 years later before the next federal prisoner would be executed. I wish I had the information on who that person was. I don't. Drop the ball on that a little bit if you guys could find that. Maybe leave a comment. I'd really appreciate that. Victor was executed back in 1963. And from what I gather, this guy was a drug addict. And the crime that he committed stemmed from him trying to get drugs. This is crazy what this guy did. Back in the 60s, this guy went through the damn phone book looking for every doctor that he could up in the phone book and was calling them in alphabetical order until he finally got on the line with one doctor, any doctor, who he told some BS to, saying, hey, look, there's this girl, she's sick, you need to come see her. I don't know exactly what he told her. There might be more information on that. The doctor came, he kidnapped the doctor, ended up killing the doctor, and it's alleged that this was all for any potential drugs and narcotics that this doctor might have been carrying with him. The reason this ended up being a federal crime is because he crossed state lines with this guy either while or after, committing the murder that he did. And just as, I guess, interesting as this person Victor was, is the last meal that this guy requested. This guy was a strange dude. For his last meal, he requested a single olive with a pit in it. Yo, I hate olives. And I wonder if he was just doing that for clout, for recognition, knowing that 100 years later, 80 years later, 60 years, however long it's been since, this took place, that there would be a thing called YouTube and somebody would be making a video about him. And I'm sure there's 99 other videos featuring this same exact meal. When Victor was transferred to death row 10 days prior to his execution, and I can't remember how he was executed. They say lethal injection here. Maybe that's what it was, but I want to say that it was something like a hanging or something like that. I don't know. Whatever the case was, they said 10 days prior to him being executed, he was transferred to death row, and the guards said that he was a model prisoner. I'm sure he had a lot of regret for what he did. He probably had enough time to sober up and realize, they about to take my life because of what I did while in the grips of addiction. Moving on, this next meal comes to us from a heinous piece of shit. There's a couple of guys on this list that I consider that. This guy right here is definitely one of them. Alan Lee Davis, aka Tiny. His last meal, though, was a pretty damn good one, and this would probably do pretty well in our last meal's restaurant. This guy requested and was given lobster tail in prison. Folks, I have not seen anybody eat lobster tail in prison since that movie Goodfellas, so I've never seen that happen in real life. If you eating lobster tail in prison nowadays, you beyond telling on dudes. You done told on the president, you done told on the government, you done told on NASA and SpaceX to get you a lobster tail in prison. And not just that, in terms of what this last meal was, lobster tail, fried potatoes, a half pound of fried shrimp, 6 ounces of fried clams, half of a loaf of garlic bread, and a 32-ounce A&W root beer. I love root beer. Little confession. Love it. Probably part of the reason why I'm so fat. Nothing but sugar. Not even any caffeine in that stuff. That's a boss meal. And it's a hell of a lot of food. I wonder if he ate it all. But like I said, this guy definitely is not any type of a good guy. I don't want to go too deep into what he did, but, you know, if you guys want to read more about it, definitely look him up. He's on Wikipedia. Murder. And he was executed in 1999. He killed like a whole family. Bad dude. Next on this list, we got John Wayne. And not to be confused with the guy from the old Westerns, John Wayne Gracie in this case. He had some horrible charges, murder, bad type of charges. He requested for his last meal 12 fried shrimp, a bucket of original recipe KFC. You know, KFC back in the day used to be really good. They fell all the way off. I don't know if you guys got a KFC near you and if you still eat there, but let me know if your KFC is any good, because the ones that I've eaten at, oh God, they are terrible these days. French fries and a pound of strawberries. Good God, can you imagine that meal? You go into the restaurant and you getting you fried chicken, 12 fried shrimp, French fries, and a pound of strawberries. They also mentioned that prior to being convicted, this guy had managed 3 KFC restaurants. John Wayne Gracie, again, another heinous POS on this list. Look this guy up. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of information about this guy. This guy had 33 victims. He was a serial killer, and he had horrible bad type of charges. And he had a nickname as the Killer Clown. And the reason that he got this nickname, allegedly, from what I read, is because his job, his occupation, was a clown who used to perform at children's hospitals and other charitable events. You know, when you walk into the restaurant, you're going to see these meals and you're going to be like, man, a pound of strawberries and some fried chicken? But if you knew the backstory about who requested these meals, that might deter you a little bit. Next meal comes to us from Ronnie Lee Gardner. His meal consisted of lobster tail, steak, apple pie, vanilla ice cream, and he got to eat this while watching the Lord of the Rings trilogy. That's interesting. I haven't seen, this is the only meal that I've seen where a guy got something else as well, you know, besides that special food. I don't know why I didn't put more information about this guy. He was locked up and he got executed because of a murder charge. He was executed in 2010. What's interesting about his execution was he chose to go by the firing squad, which is another interesting thing to mention. From what I've heard, I don't know how true this is, never been on death row. I don't even know anybody who's been on death row. But when you're on there and you are sentenced to die, they supposedly let you pick how you want to go. And if that's the case and this guy chose the firing squad, that's crazy. Another Ronnie right after that guy, Ronnie Threadgill, he was convicted of murder. He got executed in 2013. And a little interesting tidbit that I ran across about this guy, it was in Texas where this took place at. Texas no longer offers a last meal or a final meal. They no longer offer that. And instead, you are getting the same exact thing that the rest of the population is getting. Boy, Texas is rough. But Ronnie Threadgill's meal was baked chicken, mashed potatoes with country gravy, vegetables, sweet peas, bread, tea, water, punch. And what's crazy is that was the meal that they must have been serving the rest of the prison that day. And it also said, there's a little note right here. It says Texas abolished the last meal in 2011. Well, this guy Threadgill was executed in 2013. So he was given the same meal as everyone else in his unit. I got to imagine that on this particular day, when they knew that this execution was going to take place, they probably, I mean, I don't want to say hopefully, you know, they probably decided that they were going to serve a better boss meal. Because any type of chicken, baked chicken, chicken on the bone in prison, I mean, that's definitely going to be one of your better meals, if not your best meal, coming up out of that chow hall at least. This next meal is interesting for a couple of reasons right here. It's the only woman included on this list who was executed, a woman by the name of Teresa Lewis. And ironically enough, she was executed in my state during the time when I was in prison myself. I wasn't even in prison, or I was just getting to prison when this woman was executed. And that took place in 2010. She was executed at Greensville, which I believe is the only prison here in this state that offers the death penalty. That's an all-men's prison. And at the time that she was on death row, or prior to her execution, she was the only woman on death row here in this state. And she was there because of a murder. She killed not only her husband, but her stepson as well. And she did this with hopes of trying to collect an insurance claim. The stuff that some people will do for money is pretty crazy. Teresa's last meal consisted of fried chicken, peas with butter, apple pie, and a Dr. Pepper. Try to lighten the mood a little bit. Imagine walking into Last Meal's Family Eatery, and your correctional officer / waiter walks up and tells you what the specials are. Folks, tonight our special is the Teresa Lewis, consisting of fried chicken, peas with butter, apple pie, and an ice-cold Dr. Pepper. There's only one more on this list that I want to share with you, and it's the last meal of a guy by the name of Steven Anderson. When I tried to look this guy up, Steven Anderson is actually an NFL player. I believe he plays for maybe the Texans. I think it was the Texans. But the Steven Anderson in question who was executed in California. There ain't no Wikipedia about this guy. And in fact, all of the information I found on him was from the California Department of Correction and Rehabilitation website. He was on death row for a heinous home invasion gone wrong. Broke into an elderly woman's house, didn't realize that she was there. When he did, he killed her. I believe he was executed in 1981. Hell, that was a year before I was born. And going back to the home invasion that led to him being on death row, the story would report that this guy came out of this with less than $100. But his last meal was something. 2 grilled cheese sandwiches, a pint of cottage cheese, hominy / corn mixture, don't know what that is, peach pie, chocolate chip ice cream, and radishes. Very weird combination right there. Almost sounds like something a pregnant chick might eat. But who knows? That could be a meal that would do really well up inside of our establishment. Folks, I wanted to share this with you guys, and I truly hope you enjoyed this, and also possibly found it interesting. I think it's the right word. I didn't want to say like entertaining. This was a more serious topic. I tried to lighten it up just a little bit, but make no mistake of it. You know, all of these people lost their life. Probably every single one of them lost their life for absolutely good reason. And I consider these last meals that we've just talked about just as interesting as the people who ate them. Folks, that's it. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did so, please leave a like and a comment letting me know exactly what you think and also what you think of our little business idea. As always, until next time, enjoy life, the free world. Never take a moment for granted. If you're looking for dinner ideas, just served one up for you right there, or however many we just talked about in this video. And make the most of every day. Peace!